Hey guys, here we are with a dusty. I don't use the scale all the time, I usually use a digital. But I want to do this with this kit. This scale has actually been accurate for me within 1/10 of a grain. What we want to do first is we want to zero the scale. So we want to make sure our ball is on the zero and that this is on zero. So there's a locking pin, you pop that pin out. And if you can see, we're at 0 and 0 on the top row. And there's just a scotia white in the 1 and a scotia in the 9, which tells me I'm on 0. This is not a perfect scale, and I'm assuming that's where your 1/10 of a grain being off comes from. There is this, it's a brass screw with a spring and a nut, and this nut will let you set your 0. So put your ball on the 0 and you zero it with the pan on it, and you're just looking for the indicator on this pointer on the plastic to line up with this arrow here. Now I'm going to have to re-zero this again because this is not where I'm going to use my scale. But you'll just, if we're a little low, we want to move this so this nut goes back a little bit. And some of these adjustments are just the most minor little bits. And this does require some patience. It takes time to set up your scale. It takes time to set up your equipment. Once you're set though, you can rock them on. Now we're pretty close, and being that I'm going to move my scale anyway, I'm going to call that good. Because you want to set it and not move it after that. I had thought about actually screwing this to my bench at one point, but I just don't have the space to do it. So I'm going to move this over and we'll get by the powder measure and we'll get that set up. So I'll be back in a couple of minutes. Alrighty, I got my scale set to 5.2 grains. I don't know how well you can see it. We got the 5 in the bottom window. And 2 up on the top. And there's a little bit of white in the 1 and the 3, but we're actually set on the 2. And my scale has been balanced. We'll set her back on there. And we're ready to set up our powder measure. Now I don't remember what powder I was using in here last or what it was. So I guess what I'm going to do is I'm going to be using Unique, made by Alliant. It is, well, I even claim it on the bottle, the most versatile powder made. And I like this. Seems to work pretty good for me in my 45s. I always try to keep the hopper as full as I can. And this has an off and an on. I think that's on all the way turned to the right. Find out here in a minute. I'm just going to use my pan. With this Unique being a bigger, see if we can show it. It's a flake powder, and they're pretty good sized flakes. So I like to give it a tap just to make sure that all the flakes are coming in and out like they're supposed to. So I'll tap at the bottom, tap at the top, tap at the bottom. Now this one I'm gonna weigh, put it on the scale. And I'll be back in a minute. Hey guys, I'm back. Had to take that call. That was Mr. Stump Greenwood SC calling to help me out with a problem, or with helping to identify a bow so I can get the proper string for it. Anyway, I took this charge, I stuck it on my scale, and it's way too heavy. So the way you adjust the powder feed, there's numbers and stuff on here, but they don't mean a whole lot of nothing really. But being heavy, I want to take the black piece here and screw that in a bit. We're really heavy, so I'm going quite a ways. And then I'll usually take a few charges and just toss them back in the hopper. And then we'll take one and measure it. And that still shows me pretty darn heavy. So we'll screw that in quite a bit more. And I shouldn't have to throw more than one charge, but I throw a few. And then we'll weigh it again. Still really heavy. And that's the process though. Now other powders you don't have to tap. Haven't had to tap with like a Tight Group, which is a smaller grain powder. But the Unique is kind of it's a big flake. And we're getting almost to where it's not bottoming out. Well, didn't bottom out anyway. Still pretty heavy. Now I probably went too far, but this is easy enough that you can come back. Now, there's other powder measures out there that handle these bigger flaked powders better than this dispenser does. And even getting to one of the more automatic ones that you use with the powder through expanding die, these work better too with the big flakes. So I don't know, we're a little light now, so I'm just gonna go about a quarter of a turn, throw a few. As soon as I get this to balance, I'll show it to you. I was probably loading for 41 Magnum or 45 Colt before, and that's why it was so far off. I think my 41, I think, is like 9 grains of powder. so stick with me here. I'm going to move the camera. That is pretty darn close to balanced. I'm going to throw a couple more and check them. But other than that, we're going to be ready to throw that 5.2 grain charge. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and charge all these cases. Each step I'll have the 5.2. I'll change my scale, change my powder measure to the 5.4 and then the 5.6. And I will do 10 of each and show you those in a few minutes. Actually, yeah, I'll show them to you in a few minutes. I guess I never showed how to get your powder in your case, but there's a little, the tip on here is, it's kind of curved in like such. You just stick your case under there, hold it up in there, and you have a charged case. You know, you probably can't see that, but we'll show you in a minute. There we go. Now, I'll just show you this just because I can. This hopper is kind of cool because now I can just turn it off. I hold my pan under here and I can just run it down with whatever is left in the hopper, or in this part. That's all of it. Now I can very carefully pull the hopper off. Just drop it in here and turn it on. And that'll just run the powder right back into my bottle. Don't mix your powders. This is the only powder that's been on my bench, was this bottle of Unique. So everything else, all my other powder is up here on a shelf. And this way I don't have to use a funnel. I'm kind of lazy like that. You could just use a powder funnel. There we are, we're all empty. Set her back on, and we'll turn it back to the off position. Put the lid back on that, the lid back on my powder, and since I'm done with it, back on the shelf. That way I won't get confused with it. I don't know if this will show real well, but we'll try it. When I'm done and all my cases are charged, I go over with a flashlight and I look into each case, and you can see them there. And I go look at each and every one to make sure there's powder in it and it looks like the appropriate amount. Believe me, the difference between 5.2 and 5.6 grains is not going to be noticeable to the naked eye. You will not be able to tell if it's a correct powder charge. On the side of my loading block, I have 5.2 and 5.4 marked. The flashlight threw off my camera. Lift it up a little, there we go. I have the 5.2 and 5.4 marked, and I'll put a piece of tape here for the 5.6 right now. And I decided I'm going to well, I'm just going to do this with the factory crimp die. I was thinking I might show you how to get your crimp without the factory crimp die, but since that's what I use and that's how I do it, I want you all to see it the way I do it. So these are all marked from 2, 4, and 6. And we're ready to move on to the next step. That's going to be another part. Stay safe. God bless. And we'll get with you in the next episode.